Welcome to Dead But Not Gone, an estate planning podcast.
Welcome to Dead But Not Gone, an estate planning podcast with Ms. Allison Phillips. Allison is a Texas estate planning attorney and a founder of the Burns Phillips Law firm, where she helps individuals and families make thoughtful decisions that keep the people they love out of court and out of conflict. I'm Evan Mack, and today we're breaking down one of the biggest questions families have when starting an estate plan, whether a will or a trust actually makes the most sense for their situation. Ms. Allison, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. So when families first come to you, thinking they need an estate plan, how often do they already assume they know whether they need a will or a trust?
I get a lot of that. One thing I can say, pretty much everyone who's calling me has already recognized that they need planning. Sometimes they come in completely fresh and I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I need. So I need you to guide me. I've gotten a lot of people who come to me from social media. They actually have seen something on social media that has triggered a thought, triggered a reaction, or scared them to death. And they're calling me because they're like, how do I do this? How do I get this fixed? But one of the things I always do coming in is you've got to get a feel for the client. You have to understand who you're talking to, what their goals are, and figure out what problems they're trying to solve. Because as many people as come in already thinking they know what they want, it's very often that's not exactly what they need. And it's not exactly the best way to solve their issue. So it's really about drilling down and figuring out what each person really is trying to accomplish.
So a lot of people hear the word trust and immediately picture, an extremely wealthy or complicated family dynasties. But what does a trust actually look like for an ordinary Texas family?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. It is one of the biggest misconceptions that I see, actually. You see the word trust and you assume I need a lot of assets. I need a lot of stuff. I don't have enough wealth to do a trust fund, right? Because people still associate trust with trust funds.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of language that overlaps, but at the end of the day, the trust is an organizational and management tool for your assets and your finances. And it's also a tool for communication. You decide what you want to happen and what goals you're trying to solve, and then you can do it by a trust and put it all in a trust and put your faith in a trust and plan ahead to what you're trying to accomplish. It's not just for the wealthy anymore. They are, they're relationship tools.
Wow. Okay. So if someone only has a will in place, what would their family likely experience after they pass away?
A will is the probate plan. So your family is going to get to experience court. In Texas, we are classified, we kind of call ourselves a probate-friendly state because, it's not always the nightmare people dream it to be in Texas. We have a lot of legislation and a lot of processes built in to ease what probate is. But at the end of the day, it is court. It's going to court, appearing in court, meeting court deadlines, policies, procedures, and it's public. So, that is one of the biggest things that I see people balk on with probate in Texas is the fact that it is probate. Everybody knows what you have. Everybody knows who's getting it. And everybody can, start trying to maybe even be predators towards what you've done.
So, Allison, what changes for a family when a trust is part of the plan instead?
Trusts can organize a lot and they're private. So anything that happens with the trust, it isn't public record. It's not public knowledge. You can keep it self-contained. It's a lot easier as far as administratively. You don't have to go through the whole process of being overseen by a court, having to be dictated by court dockets and calendars. It's almost like a family planning tool. It helps manage those dynamics and those relationships using clarity and focus. It also has the ability to start at incapacity. Your trust exists while you're alive the whole time. And it has a plan in place in the event that you become incapacitated, which means you can't take care of yourself, you can't make your own decisions, which could be temporary, could be permanent, but it could also be temporary. And that's where a lot of people forget to focus when it comes to incapacity, is that you may regain your capacity. And you don't want to come back to yourself and then find out that somebody you didn't choose has been making all your decisions, or that somebody you did choose might not have been making the decisions you felt were most beneficial to you, or even worse, no one's been making any decisions. And because either no one took that step to go get declared to do that, or, they just haven't gotten around to it yet. But in the meantime, all your bills have come due, all your drafts have been drafting, and you're just in a pickle.
Wow. So you kind of mentioned it earlier, and you mentioned probate, and it's one of those things people hear about all the time, but they, usually don't understand, like, their own family is dealing with it. What tends to surprise people most about this probate process, especially in the state of Texas?
I'd have to say the fact that it's court. I mean, a lot of people come to me and they're like, I need to do this probate. And it's like, okay, well, let's get it filed. Let's get going. They're like, wait, file what? Why are we filing things? What do you mean go to court? I have to go in front of the judge? I'm going to have to talk? And it's like, yes, that's probate. And that's what a will does. And that's actually one of those myths that I get a lot too when people come to me for probate. They think because they had a will that they don't have to do any of that. But the way you manage the will is through a probate process. So, I think that's one of the biggest surprises that people have. And then a lack of clarity. Everybody has their own opinions. If there's not documents in place, everybody will have their own opinions on what they want to happen. And in probate, if there's no documents in place, the state has a plan, and the state's going to impose its plan regardless of what mom and dad said, what the person who passed away indicated to others, or what their loved ones feel is they're entitled to have. So that's where a lot of litigation comes in, because there's not a lot of communication. Nobody knows what to expect. Everybody's trying to speculate on what the person who passed away would have wanted, or may have articulated to some, but not all. And the litigation element and the way that it plays on family dynamics really takes a toll and shocks people, because they're like, I never would have thought my relative would have done this to me. I never would have thought that this ever would have been a problem. And it's like, well, it's not. I have found a lot of these issues, they're not necessarily coming from greed. They're just coming from lack of clarity, lack of understanding, not knowing what's going on, not effectively communicating the plan, and not understanding the process.
So, in situations involving blended families, young children, business ownership, or strained family relationships, when does estate planning become less about documents and more about, maybe preventing future conflict?
I've never been a fan of saying that estate planning is about documents. The documents are such an important element of estate planning, but fundamentally, estate planning is relationship planning. And those situations that you mentioned, the blended families, the minor children, those are all higher risk scenarios. But even traditional families still have to plan for the relationships, because there is a family dynamic that is always a factor, and grief plays some weird ugly fingers in family dynamics that already currently exist. And I mean, let's be real. Healthy families, they struggle if there's no communication, if there's a lack of clarity, if you're not able to conflict resolve. And it gets even worse in probate, because you're also dealing with grief. Grief comes from somebody isn't just mourning the loss of their loved one. They're mourning the loss of the future that they thought was promised to them, that has now completely upended their life. So when you play with those emotions and they become a factor, it can just blow everything out of the water. So one of the best ways that we can try to minimize and reduce that is clarity, clear communication through legally binding and effective documents.
Wow, good stuff. So Miss Allison, for someone listening who knows they need to start planning but feels intimidated by this whole process, what would you want them to understand before taking that first step?
Well, the first step is easier than you think. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have perfect finances. You don't have to know exactly what you want from the get-go. You want to make sure that you're choosing somebody who's going to focus on education and knowledge and not talk down to you, not make you feel like you know so much less than you thought you did. You're going to want somebody who is going to grow what you understand, what you know, but drill down to what your goal is. Like I kind of mentioned this at the beginning. It's really important to know the problem that you're trying to solve. And sometimes you may not initially know that. You don't have to initially know that to get started. You may not know that initially on the call, but through conversation, through investigating in family dynamics, just getting to know my clients, I'm able, a lot of the times, that's where we drill down and be like, okay, well, it sounds like, I know you said you called because you went through a horrible probate with your parents' estate, or you called because, you've got minor kids and you want to make sure that the right guardians are selected. But, once we got to talking, it really sounds like what you're afraid of is this happening in your child's life with you not there to guide them. And maybe this tool could help you kind of provide guidance from beyond. Like, I'm not saying that you can like seance this or anything, but you can kind of project some of the issues that might be coming up, and especially if you have minor children in their lives, and maybe, write them a letter or leave them a little note. Give the caregivers some guidance, especially if you have a parenting strategy you like to use specifically. Give the caregivers instructions so they know what kind of mentality you are trying to present with your kids.
Oh, that's good stuff. Miss Allison, thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you so much for, sitting down and chatting with me. I get passionate about this stuff. I can talk all day.
That's good. That's a good thing. And people will love that. I'm telling you. That's it for today's episode of Dead But Not Gone, an estate planning podcast with Allison Phillips. If you're ready to make thoughtful decisions about your future and create a plan that protects the people that you love, visit bplestateplan.com to learn more. Thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to subscribe to the show, share the show, and leave a review as well. And we'll see you all next time.
Thank you, Evan.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.